So we called the meeting to order. We're now at agenda item 2, which is citizen speak. We asked for any citizen that wishes to speak, please raise your hand online. We do have one person in person. And we ask that when you come up, please state your name and your address and limit your discussion to 3 minutes, and we'll start in person. Sure.
Bring my chair up.
Sure, please join us.
I am Phil Johanny. My address is 23 Parker Drive. I was stunned by the amount of money that was discussed at the select board meeting the other night. And I think when you look at many of the people in Milton who are like me, I'm 69 years old. I recently retired. I just cannot support a debt exclusion override of that magnitude. And I think I respect the work that's been done by the committee and all the time that's been put in, but I don't know that the committee has emphasized affordability for a town of our size. And so I think you may have a very difficult time getting this passed with a number of that size. And I would urge you to reconsider looking at some of the, I think you called it imagining, like going around and visiting other buildings. I think they're too fantastic. The ceilings, the libraries, all those things are necessary, but not on that scale. I think back to the school I went to. I went to Catholic school. Affordability, cutting costs was huge. And my building was a cement block building with a brick exterior. They painted the cement blocks, looked white, looked clean. Did it bother me as a kid? Not at all. When I went to high school, the building was over 100 years old. Same thing. There is no need for extravagance, especially when you look at the constituents who have to pay for it. What will I give up? Will I give up insulin? Will I give up lunches? What will I need to give up to continue to live in this town, in my house? I think you really need to reconsider what is the total cost? What would be an appropriate cost for our town? What would get you a yes vote? And I think 173 million will not get you a yes. I also have written in the Milton Times several times about like operational overrides. And I don't remember her name. She was superintendent for a long period of time prior to the jet. I asked her for all of the job descriptions for all non-teaching positions in Milton Public Schools. And as I read through them, as someone who has never worked for a town or a city, only in the private sector, I didn't feel that there were any robust job descriptions. And so, I was reading in the Milton Times, so maybe they'll have to lay off a teacher. And my thought is, why not administrators? Why don't we look at administrators? What is their role? How robust is their job description? What, could jobs be consolidated? Could fewer people handle more tasks? I think the 5 million override, I think the 173 million debt exclusion is a real problem for you. You probably need to succeed, but not at those numbers. I think you're going to have a real problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing nobody else in person, we'll go online. Yep, Mr. Jackson, you're recognized. Give me 1 second to promote you. Yep.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Pete, we can hear you. Just do your name and address just for the minutes.
Yeah. Peter Jackson, 14 Capon Street. I just want to remind the committee that the EEA review of the Article 97 and Public Land Protection Act has not been completed. They did issue a finding related to natural resource value only, but even that determination says that the secretary takes no position on whether it complies with the EEA Article 97 land disposition policy. The review so far does not include the appraisal, the alternatives analysis, the suitability of the proposed replacement land for its intended uses, the equitability of the proposed exchange. It doesn't review whether it complies with the land use conversion requirements of the self-help program that funded the purchase of that land, of the Lamb land to begin with. And finally, there further has to be a filing of an ENF by the town that's required as part of the process. And I don't know whether that has started yet or not. I'd be happy to hear whether that process has started. Thank you.
Pete? And we'll give it a minute to see if there's any other people who should speak. Seeing none. All right, moving on. So to agenda item number 3, which is approval of past meeting minutes, Monday, July 15th, 2024. So obviously with everybody's packet that they got, we got the minutes from our last meeting. So just see if there's any edits, comments, anything we could change to work for.
know if this is the right time to say it,
Sure.
but I thought at this meeting we reviewed the feasibility presentation, and it was going to be given to the estimator the next day, who all along talked about needing 2 weeks to complete, and that was tight. But at this meeting, I do see the feasibility estimate was due on the 26th, and it was actually presented to the select board on the 23rd.
Mm-hmm.
So there's obviously a lot of conversation going on the following week that I feel left out of. And because the construction was developed in only 1 week's time. This is a problem. Here I am, the select board member of this committee, and I don't find out about the budget number until a select board meeting when the public finds it. One makes judgments based on events that occur, and the fact that I was kept out of the loop. I said, I think this behavior breeds mistrust. And you're asking the whole town to trust you right now. And I don't think that people can make this decision without the facts and the backgrounds of the facts. And here I am among you, and I don't have them. I just wanted to say that.
To be clear, the estimate came in. The first people who got it were the members of the school building committee. I sent it directly to everybody internally. I can forward you the email again.
Okay.
So prior to the
When was that?
That was Monday. If you need, I can pull the email up.
Supposed to be due on the 26th.
It was. So essentially what we did, as I mentioned on previous meetings, the goal was to get a budgetary number to present to the select board on the 23rd, ideally some sort of window. The estimator was able to get us a finite number earlier based on the square footage costs and the estimate that he provided. The estimate provided is extremely detailed. It's not like you just threw a big round number out there. If you look at it, there's breakdowns of everything. So for myself as chair, when I got that number, originally I thought it would be a window. When I got that finite number, I spread it with the entire school building committee first. So the school building committee were the first ones to know about it, not the select board. And then, yes, as that became a public number, I was going in front of the select board Tuesday. I felt it was warranted to get it out there because that is your request. You wanted a number, we got you a number. So in regards to the agenda item, we can talk about the cost estimate later. But in regards to the agenda item for meeting minutes, is there anything you'd like to add?
That's all.
Okay. Anyone else? no edits, entertaining, motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes.
Further discussion? Hearing none. All right, roll call vote. Actually, all in person, say aye, it makes it a lot easier.
To abstain, because I was not here.
Okay, so all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, one abstention. You have that, James? Group. All right. So item 4A, discussion approval of land swap. So as some of you are aware, the land swap over the past couple of weeks has been navigating its way through the House. It's gone through the Senate vote. It's gone through the Senate. It went over to the House. The House made some minor edits on there that the Senate then concurred on. Following that concurrence, it's gone through 2 roll call votes through the House of Representatives and the Senate. All were unanimous. There was nothing against. So at that point, based on the process that Senator Timothy laid out to us, rather than the final step, it's actually sitting on the, technically sitting on the governor's desk. So the hope is it's going to be signed today or tomorrow, not today, tomorrow or the next day. So essentially, once that's signed, it's signed into law. So that's kind of my update on that. I'll open it up if people have questions or anything in regards to it.
You said we were going to hear within the next 2 days, hopefully.
That's, yeah, because the session ends on the 31st. So basically with now, that's kind of where we're at. So, you know, for myself, I want to thank Senator Timothy. He authored it, got it going and stuff like that. Then after that, you know, Representative Driscoll, I mean, he got it at the end of June and it's basically really ushered it through, you know, from now to where we are now. It's amazing. So both of them, Senator Timothy, Chief of Staff Don Sirianni, has been in contact over the past couple of weeks constantly, and Representative Driscoll and Representative Fluker is also a co-sponsor. And so I just want to say thank you. You've done a lot of work. Any other questions in regards to the land swap? All right, moving on. Let me just see if there's any other members. Sometimes forget if somebody shows up late. In case Tim or Glenn's going to be late, he said he'd be on around apologies. All right, so item 5, new business. Item A, discussion update from the architects, and we'll jump in at the top. Review feasibility estimate, and I think Shanali's with us. Shanali, you still there? We can't hear you, Shanali.
You can't, okay.
There you go. There you go.
Oh, there,
Sorry.
okay, great.
Much better.
Okay, excellent. I can't turn on my video, but I think that's fine because I think Seamus is going to share the screen. So the first item of discussion is the estimate, and I'm just going to do a high level review of it to show.
Okay. 1 second, Shanali.
All right, can everyone see that screen? Mostly Shanali.
I can see it on
Okay, great.
Right. So Seamus, I think if we could just go to the summary page so we could just talk a little bit of the high level component pieces. If you want to just zoom into that top section where it says new middle school, new pre-K, that would be great. So if everybody can see here, PMC, who's the cost estimator, took the gross floor areas that we provided to them and did a detailed breakdown of all the components of what would go into the construction of the new middle school and the new pre-K, and came up with the 72,601,000 for the middle school, and then the roughly 11 million for the pre-K, and then did a site work phase 2 component, which was that $11,534,000. That if we look down a little bit, site work phase 1 at that roughly $2.3 million. The reason it's below the line is because it's excluded from the GC. So there's some savings on the markups there, which is why it's down below, because it's considered a separate package. So we were able to get some savings with that site work phase enabling package. And that includes clearing the site, moving Guile Road, and preparing the site at a horizontal level for what we call the vertical construction, which is the building construction going back to the top of the middle school and the pre-K. Site work phase 2 includes the finish work of the landscape once the buildings are constructed. And that brings us to that total of the 133.5 construction costs, not project costs. We've been a little conservative on the design and pricing contingencies, and he's included escalation for the enabling part as well as the construction of the building part, as you can see in the middle section. And then included of course, all the insurance and the bonds and the builder's risk. So this is a fairly robust estimate for the building, for the 2 buildings rather, as well as the site work, including the moving of Guile Road. This also includes geothermal allowance for playground furniture. There's allowance for signage and wall graphics. So we've gone pretty detailed in terms of the level of items included. Mark will be glad to hear it does include projectors and whiteboards and all of those things that people do get concerned, rightly so, that get forgotten in the estimates, and all of that stuff is included. I'm happy to answer questions if people have a specific question. We can direct it to any page if people are interested.
Janelle,
Go for it.
I'm just wondering what's the typical variance on these numbers when you get to completion?
Oh, that's a good question. Honestly, it's the time delay between the design and the construction. So the longer you take between now and the start of construction is where you're going to see the biggest gaps, but we're not talking huge numbers. You'll see some single-digit percentage gaps. I think Mark Loring could actually probably speak to this a little bit better about the gaps, but it's been a little hard to predict, quite honestly, in the last 5 years because of the pandemic and the escalation costs of construction materials and labor costs. But we don't see hundreds of millions of dollars differential. We don't see those kinds of extravagant differentials. The sooner you can design the project and the more often you have the cost estimate at the different phasing, the more you can control the costs as you move forward. And as long as you can control the scope. So as long as there's no scope creep.
Mm-hmm. So.
Another question for you on the estimate, maybe another way to ask the same question is, does the estimator give you a plus minus with it for accuracy? They'll say, at some levels, they might say plus 20%, and other levels, they might say plus or minus 5%. I don't know if he gives any level of accuracy like that.
That's really our design person contingency at this point. So right now we're at 15%, and that'll come down with each estimate. As we get more and more refined design, that the number that they'll carry for design price contingency will decrease.
Understood, but does he also give a plus minus? Like contingency is different than that level of accuracy in an estimate. So I don't know if he puts that in a write-up anywhere or not. I mean, honestly, I would expect it to be really low because this is what he does, and all these schools tend to be somewhat similar from town to town to town, and I'm sure he gets all the metrics back at the end of all these projects of the actual costs. So I would expect it to be a really small percentage as far as the plus minus goes, even at this stage. And then I guess the other question I had for you was, when you have a budget like this, so now does this set what you designed to from a budget perspective? You know, you look at, I've got, call it $100,000 for each classroom. And then when you go into the next phases of design, are you keeping that in mind as a target to hit or underrun as you design? Is that part of the process?
I'm sorry, I don't know if people can actually hear me when I'm speaking.
We can hear you now, Shonali.
Okay, great. So I'm not sure who was speaking prior about the design contingency, but I just wanted to revisit that for a second, that it's correct that the design contingency does get reduced with each next estimate level because the drawings get more and more specific. And so that is your buffer going forward that accounts for any changes in the assumptions as you move towards the design. And so it does help us stay on target so that people understand that number, that 133.5 is the goal to stay right there. But going back.
Your mic dropped out, Shonali.
Is that working?
Yes.
You're back.
Okay. I realize I'm going to have to hold my headphones up. Okay. So, as I was saying, that plus or minus, other estimators have used that as a tool, but Peter is so experienced in school projects that he's able to test these numbers against a large swath of projects across the region. And so what we found when we spoke to him, that these construction per square foot costs are right in line with what he's seeing in the market today. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, that answered the first question. One follow-up question for you was just how do you use this estimate as you go into the next phase of design? You use that as your benchmark for how you're designing it. So you look at it as your budget to stay within.
So we're still really early in the process. I know that a lot of you have been working on this for 5 years, but from a design point of view for the building, we're still really early. The main goal for the next phase for schematic is to stay at that 152, 177 square footage. As long as we're able to get in all of the back of house and designing the locker rooms and the bathrooms and all of those things that are in that grossing factor that we've talked about before, as long as we could stay at that 152, 177, then we feel pretty confident as we move into DD that we're going to stay on target. But that is one of the key tasks for that next schematic phase.
So one of the things too, you'll see when Shonali talks about schedule is as we go through the next stages of the project, they're check-ins on costs. So it's not, call it a cost estimate, whatever you want to do, but as the design progresses, we do that and then kind of auto-correct. Or as Sean said, there's a contingency budget that we have, and as things start coming up, as we're progressing the design, the drawing and contingency go down. So I think that kind of is that what you're looking for. Basically, this isn't the only time we're going to do a cost. We're going to be doing costs along the way.
Yeah, I was expecting that.
Yeah.
But I also, I guess, have an expectation that when you set a budget, the design team works to that budget.
That is our job to hold
Yes.
them to that. But, you know, I mean, it's weird for me to be on the owner's side now, because every other time I'm on the other side of, like, where you are, Chanel.
Yeah.
And that's the game of like, you do a project, you take it to a certain schematic design, you set a budget to it, and then that's what you lock into. And that's essentially what we're trying to do, is get to what that budget is, progress the design, and then that's where us as a committee have to make hard decisions of, hey, this is gonna cost too much, we need to reduce, we need to do this, there's, you know, certain trade-offs that we're gonna have to do, and that's, I know for us, for the past 5 years, we've been working on land and, you know, the scope of what we're building and all that, but we're getting into, you're starting to see stuff on paper, it's up to us to make those decisions, you know what I mean? As they progress and we do these cost estimates, if things are getting more expensive, it's up to us to figure out how to get it back on and give them direction. Mark?
Yeah, I can just share my own experience. I completely agree. Again, you gotta just consistently work even once the construction project happens, right? Costs will come in higher than you expected, or there's some unknown and that increased costs. And so you have some contingency, but you gotta obviously manage it. And a lot of you are very experienced, obviously, within construction, but so mostly maybe just for the public here. And then within design, right, the architects will have some great ideas, and you're gonna have to value engineer those out in order to like save cost and say like, well, actually, maybe we don't want to design that as actually the 133,529, maybe we want it at 130, so we have some buffer in case something comes up. The other thing is, from my experience of these, like the cost estimator is trying to hit kind of that 50th percentile, right? And so in public bidding, that is sometimes good because you can actually get a bid, right? Because you have to choose the lowest bidder. And so sometimes it's good because you can get somebody who will underbid it and be at like maybe the 30th percentile. And so instead of 133, it's 120, 125. It's also possible that you bid at a time where your project, for whatever reason, is not attractive based on when you're bidding it, right? Other details around how you're bidding it. Maybe you're a town that doesn't pay your bills on time, and contractors know that and don't want to work with you, and so they'll charge you more, and you'll be like suddenly, they'll go above that rate. So like all these various things. I think my experience with Peter specifically is I've had jobs where I got the price and it was more than what Peter bid. And some of that was like the unique site logistics that maybe he didn't consider as much, or we weren't as clear about within our write-up. Got another jobs where he nailed it right on the head. I've got another jobs where they were a little bit under. I'd say most of my jobs, he's either been kind of added or under, given the public bidding process. But again, it has been more volatile over these last couple of years. I think it's been hard for contractors. Like contractors will overbid work because they're just not actually sure what things are going to cost when they get the contract in 12 months. Like how much is lumber actually going to be? I'm going to carry a 7% markup from what it is now because I don't have any idea, and I'm going to protect myself as a contractor. So all those things just make it very hard. But cost certainly isn't going to go down. I think is unless we can somehow significantly reduce square footage. There's just no way in 12 months or however many months, if things even settle, that this will settle in a downward trajectory.
So the one thing to note on that too is like to get ahead of this was, some of the unknowns we were trying to identify early on, soil conditions, rock, stuff like that. So that's part of the work we did too, of going out and taking boring samples and everything there. The boring samples, all dirt, which was good, and that's basically majority of where the building's going. The hazmat analysis on the soils that were removed, there's nothing has hazmat with them, so it's like two good kind of green lights for that. So I just say it more so everybody knows of like there was some front end work done too for that too. Any other questions on the estimate or anything like that? And James, can you just kind of page through just for people online? I mean, we've got 34 pages of this here, you know what I mean? So because I'm sure at some point people will request the estimates, so just to kind of walk through.
I think one thing that was good on that, maybe it was the cover page, but where it separates the cost for the pre-K building versus the 7-8. It's good to see there's significant difference for the pre-K being a separate
actually.
building as a lower cost.
Yeah, could you go to that on the front page, on the square footage cost, just kind of focusing on.
Yeah, so we're at 570 for the 7-8 and 441 for the pre-K.
Yep.
That was a great result. The other thing on this page, Sean, that I was kind of interested in was we've got escalation in there at 5.33%, assuming the start of next October. What I'd be curious from the estimator is if we didn't get approval in the cycle and we had to wait longer, what do we think that escalation would be and how much would that increase that cost? Because then we go from 173 to some bigger number. But it'd be good to get an independent opinion of what that increased, call it a year. What would increase that escalation be and how much more would that cost the town?
For rough numbers, I would say you could assume 5.33 for another year. I'm not, because tough in conversation with Peter, with escalations, he kind of runs it on a yearly basis anyway. So, we'd just have to ask if you were going to carry that for 2 years, would you carry the same number? Would you carry a different number? Right.
Yeah.
No, I'll relay that one to him. And, either get whatever his responsive.
If it's another 5%, there's $5 million that we spent just because we waited a year.
Yeah.
And we get nothing in return.
So the one thing, back to your comment on accuracy too.
Yeah.
So if you look at MSBA's graphs that they publish on their website for pricing, and they have it was in my presentation on last Tuesday. They have a trend line for costs when things are bid out and they actually have data back. But then when you look at what they're estimating right now, the number that he quoted, I think the total number at the bottom is like something. 877 a square foot. So when you plot that into that graph and look at it, you're basically right where it's expected to be for that there. So that was one of the other ones I did when I got this to, really just to check. Yeah, give it a sanity check against, the stuff that's out there and stuff like that.
One other thing I wasn't sure on where to incorporate it or how to incorporate it or if to incorporate it was the all the tax credits all the credits we were going to get for net zero. Wasn't that something like $9 million potentially?
It was, so we're not doing net zero. We haven't.
Well,
yeah, geothermal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which gets us close to that, yeah.
Geothermal had a roughly 34% tax rebate, and Shanali, correct me if I go off on this. I believe, can you go to the mechanical portion from geothermal?
So it's a little difficult. I will preface this. It's a little difficult to estimate the tax credit because the portions of the geothermal are split up into different sections. But Kate, our director of sustainability, is looking at it to see if she can refine that number. So this 133 number does not include any of the credits. Right. And we're working on that number. Now that we have the estimate, we're going to be able to refine that a little bit for you. It's still an estimate, obviously, but it will give you a better, clearer idea of what to expect.
So the range number.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So if we look at we go to page 14, top of the page. Yeah, so that's talking about the site, the equipment. So it's like a breakdown, you know what I mean, of the plant equipment. I think overall, when you look at the front end mechanical, is roughly around $20 million. So the tax credit would be based on that. I looked at that too against what Kate, when she came in to give her presentation, and the estimate is basically in line with what she showed there.
It's pretty close. Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, to answer your question, Schnally did too. The 133 million that's there doesn't show any of that stuff. So, but when we do a debt exclusion, we need to, finance the full amount, and then basically we would get that money back at a different portion of time. How the town wants to utilize that for debt service is kind of on them, but the good news is we'd be getting money back.
I guess my thought was that just somehow it would be good to incorporate those potential refunds in here.
Yeah.
Just to, even as a note or something, so it's understood.
Yeah, the problem is like with Peter's job is to just estimate it, you know, as we develop, because the other part of this is we have soft costs. So, you know, I mean, the 30% that we're doing there, for us, we need to, you know, that's why we gave my presentation was this construction cost and then overall project costs for everything. And we do that overall project cost as we start publicizing that even more formally. That's where it would appear too. Okay. Anything else on this?
I have a question. I think it's more of a point that I think to speak to the comment that we heard earlier, that we have gone through the exercise to try to, you know, be more conservative in terms of the size of the school, right? We could have, I mean, in the early design, right, gone and added all these wonderful things and gone crazy with space, and you know, our kids would benefit from it, but we tapered that to get to a more reasonable square footage and layout. So that exercise, I think it just needs to be noted that was done. And that I think the other point that you made, which I appreciated during the select board meeting, is that the number is the ceiling that we gave. We wouldn't sort of continue to add to that, but we would manage the cost so that we can come ideally under. And that's important to note. And I think the other piece that it's sinking in yet again, and I always say it all the time, but I think it's important for us to know that delaying this project just makes it more costly. It doesn't take away from it. It doesn't make it easier for the town to do what it needs to happen.
So a lot of questions. So we'll move on. So agenda number 5A2, project schedule update. So yeah, you got that there. Yeah, Shanali, I'll let you take it away.
Sure, great, thank you. So just to give you an overall idea of how this schedule is set up, the first 3 lines are meetings that will track moving forward through the process. As things get scheduled, we'll add to this, but we basically cover the select board meetings, the SBC meetings, and then the working group meetings. So we could track those horizontally across the top of the schedule. The next section is the SD pricing set. So we are officially in schematic design and we are barreling towards a September 13th deadline. We are expecting the consultant narratives and drawings to come in around September 6th. We are in the process of meeting with them, coordinating with them, getting more information into our drawings as we develop them. And we're aiming to deliver that drawing set along with narratives to Peter on September 13th. And we're holding 2 weeks to get back a cost estimate, which is that green dot. Very happy dot to get an updated estimate. As we are prepping to move into the next phase, you're going to see that there's an estimated town meeting in October, that vertical gray line. Seamus, if you could sort of zoom in from where it starts with environmental perfect. Thank you. Exactly. As you can see, there's that October special town meeting that will be held sometime in October, then the November election. And then after that election, assuming everything's moving forward, we're going into environmental permitting and design development, and that's going to happen concurrently. We are holding 3 months for design development. And we are estimating that we will also get a cost estimate at that phase as well. That other gray line is if we happen to push to May for the vote, there is this possibility of continuing with the environmental permitting and the design development so that we have a more robust number at that green cost estimate for that April, or rather May vote. Sorry, apologies. I should have moved that gray line over. The other blue line there is the early site package. So what happens is when you're in DD, and this is for the public, there are certain parts of the project where you get enough information and detail that you can start parts of the on-site preparation early while you're finishing the building drawings. So going back to the cost estimate that had that phase 1 site enabling package, that's what's happening there. We're wrapping up those drawings and we're starting that site enabling early in the summer of 2025. And then if you move to the left, which hasn't been identified yet, but will happen in that gray zone once we get a little bit more information after the votes, is we'll do an early foundation package, we'll do an early steel package. These are all the things that help us keep the costs, overall project costs, in line and in control, because the earlier you get some of these expensive pieces out and running, the easier it is to lock in those costs and hold to a project schedule. And schedule is key to financial success on a project. And then we'll move into design, CDs, and all of that after we get into that sort of gray portion. But right now, the goal is to get a successful vote, whether that happens in November or in May. And I should also just note, contractually, the red is where we have our contract, and then we'd have to revisit that contract after that green cost estimate dot.
So just point of clarity too. So Shanali, the October special town meeting, that would be anticipated if we're on the November ballot.
Right.
So there is just for the public's understanding, there isn't a planned October meeting yet. But essentially on the process, if it was on the November ballot, ideally we would have a town meeting prior to that. So you had a question, Mark. I've got a
No, honestly, my question was the last point she made, which is just where does our contract end? Because I know how much great work they're doing. We had a limited budget when we brought them on, and at some point it runs out. So if we are unable to get on the November election timeline, or October vote, November election, it seems like we at least need to figure out a way to get additional funding for the project. Otherwise, we're sitting on our hands and the project really isn't moving forward at all. Not even just from a construction standpoint, but even a design standpoint, if we're just waiting around until April and May for full funding. So I guess something we can discuss after we figure out what happens with November budget.
Any questions on the schedule? So the one other to note too is like the early site package for Gal Road. The anticipation was to do that in the spring. So again, if it doesn't happen in November, or we don't have funding, essentially that part of the project gets pushed out. And that's the one. If that gets pushed out, the goal of like opening by 2027 just goes out the window. And then if you remember when we selected the architects, their finish time, I think, was like June, if you go back to the presentations there. So if we push that out, we've got a very short window there to like finish the project and open the school in this fall. So if we don't hit that, we're not going to open a school in February. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's going to push till the following fall and stuff like that. So that's one, is we've been going through this whole thing. Why for me it's been extremely important trying to hit this deadline in November and stuff like that, not only for the amount of people voting, but also for the overall project schedule and stuff like that, hit it. So we kind of hit the ground running in the spring, move Gal Road, clear the site, and then, you know, follow on with the other projects. Any other questions?
I just wanted to point out one other quick thing. Sean, you and I discussed it earlier. Seamus, if you can zoom into the bottom left. This was in last week's meeting, a couple of the meeting members were talking about MSBA and going back and getting to MSBA to get through the approval. And I just sort of mapped out quickly what that would mean from today moving forward. So it's 1 year additional for application and acceptance. And then there's a 1 year for signer selection. And then it's 1 year to 1.5 years for feasibility and schematic. So if MSBA is still on the table, I just want you all to be aware that's adding 3 to 3.5 years to your timeline, roughly.
Sounds like a reset.
Assuming you get in at the next.
Correct.
The next.
Correct.
Yeah, so that's upon acceptance to the program.
This is an optimistic view, assuming acceptance.
Any idea what escalation would be over that timeline?
5, and if we're doing 5.5% a year over 3.5 years, about $26 million.
Okay.
And a bigger building. Don't forget that.
Actually, that's a good point too. Yeah, because MSBA will force us to allow, so the classrooms that we agreed on when we did the visioning and kind of we're bringing it back, we looked at what the size for the existing Pierce was. And the size that MSBA told us to carry was actually bigger. So we're allowed to scale it down because the teachers were like, yeah, the rooms we have are fine. If you go with MSBA, there are minimum requirements for the classroom size that you have to do. So this is going to get bigger too. So it's another one to keep in mind that comes up. You take the number of classrooms that we counted when we did all the stuff, and add whatever percentage that is. I don't know it off the top of my head. It would equate to larger square footage size, more square footage, more cost. And just Chanel, are you done sharing your screen?
Yeah, I have nothing else unless people have other questions.
Any questions? I'm just going to share mine.
Was that
Oh, yeah.
scheduled in the packet, in the
No,
meeting?
she had just did it for today. And anything we're presenting.
I cannot.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, she just got that plus about 5.
Yeah.
Is my screen showing?
I see it on my screen.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, you were just presenting a different one because you were in presenter mode. So just run through real quick. So similar to schedule. What I tried to do, so the process for like the vote on this for what we've been doing, it's complex. I mean, it's taken a while to kind of get there, but what I tried to do is there's essentially everything we've done on this project, we've gone down parallel paths. When we were going after Fompong, we were still keeping Ballot. I mean, when we were doing, we were looking for land, we were developing a program, right? So this should come as nothing new to us that we need to do. But essentially what I tried to do is lay out steps, numerical for what the ballot question is, and then alphabetical for what town meeting needs to do. So when we look at this, first thing, construction cost estimate, we completed that. The next thing is basically a vote from the select board to get it on to the November election. So to do that, Ms. Coyne, as you mentioned last time, we got to give it to the town clerk. Town clerk certifies it, sends it up to the Secretary of State. Correct. So what I tried to do for people, just so you know, this is essentially what the ballot question would look like. There's no dollar value associated with it. So what this does, and the reason I bring this up is that if you go back to the timeline on this, the ballot question is there to basically just authorize people to tell the town they want us to go above and beyond Prop 2.5, right? The warrant article that we do for town meeting is where the dollar value comes in. So when you look at as we go to town meeting for this is essentially, of course, my squares went off. My daughter probably touched my laptop. But essentially what you see there, like any other warrant article we have, this is where we ask for the money. So what this does now is, by the time the warrant article goes to print, we'd have to have that all finalized, right? We'd have to need it finalized prior, so we go through the warrant committee and everything else there. What that allows us to do is, as we heard tonight, that the cost is too high, people are concerned. It allows us time to revise what we have right now before a town meeting, to bring the number down, to make those hard decisions I talked about, and then have it to a number that would be reasonable. So when I say this, mainly more for us and also for the public of, was there sticker shock when the number came in? I think everybody can agree. You know what I mean? It's much higher. And, imagine it as you mentioned, Dr. Miranda, if we went with the visioning statement of 200,000 square feet at 871 a square foot, we'd be, be a very expensive project. But, obviously there's concerns with what the cost is. I share it too. I'm a taxpayer, single income, I don't want to drive Ubers to pay for the school. But, I mean, I think we're at that weird point now where we all understand the needs there. We need a school, right? Can we afford a school? And this is kind of, the work that's going to come on this committee to kind of work out, to figure out, how we do it, what we're comfortable putting up there for a number, and, working with the district to figure out, what we can scale back on further than what we did. But,
Yeah, and also just to add to that, also to convince lay out the logic to the town as to this is why, and then ultimately they will decide if our argument is good or our project is a good one that they're willing to fund or not.
Yeah, and essentially to kind of just walk through it is, A is, for us to prepare the warrant article, we get a draft now, that I showed. The next would be have the select board recommend it or not recommend it, similar for the warrant committee to recommend it or not recommend it. And then it goes to town meeting where we need 2/3 approval. So I think the select board doesn't recommend it and then warrant committee doesn't recommend it. That makes a very hard sell at town meeting for a 2/3 approval. But essentially what happens is after town meeting approves it with that warrant that's on there and the dollar value that's on there, when the voters go with item 4 that you see there for the presidential election, they would then have the number with town meeting, assuming town meeting agreed to it, they would have that number there when they went to make the thing. And as you mentioned, that gives us, my presentation to select board the other night, that gives us those months for what I call engagement, public meetings, walk through. We're working, now that we have the number, we're working through what the tax impacts will be. So, I'm assuming that's going to be coming out fairly soon. I know the town administrator's been working on it. So, we're getting there. But the first part was getting this cost assessment. Now the balls are starting to roll. So, but I just wanted to put this timeline just so everybody kind of understood what the process is, because we've been talking about it a lot, and unless you see it, I'm more visual or stuff like that. So if nobody has any questions, I'll stop sharing.
Very helpful. Thank you.
So in regards to the project schedule, any other questions or comments? None. So new business item B, which is discussion approval, recommendation of ballot question on debt exclusion to fund new school on November 2024 election ballot. So, we have taken a vote previously of this committee for the recommendation for that. But, I just feel we should, now that we have a number for it, we should kind of reiterate that. And it's 8 o'clock, I'm just checking the flames on it too, just in case. Not on. So, essentially with this, I'll open up for any discussion or purpose or anything like that anybody has.
I just say for me, what, unfortunately,
Mhm.
what I have to consider also is an operational override. And I feel an operational override is, unfortunately, the timing's lousy. The operational override is the most threatening to everything, including the school. So that has to come first.
That's it.
So sorry, to clarify from your perspective, there was like no ability to have the town consider the school project before an operational override. So that means that the vote for a possible vote for the school project couldn't occur until next November, right? A year from now.
Hey, worst case, spring. Not
That's
November.
when the operational override is occurring. The operational override has to occur first. I guess you're saying simultaneously?
Which happens in the spring. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe simultaneously, but certainly not after.
What?
Operational, after death.
So that, are you saying the school building would not happen after?
Well, I don't know what it does to everything. All I know is that has to come first. I mean, we just had the schools come up to us for last year, $415,000 they needed. I mean, we have a threat, I mean, to the schools right now. And we don't know the answer to it. We just dodged a bullet. And we don't know, you know, so we had a budget together for next year before this happened. What does that tell me about next year's budget? It questions it. And I understand, my wife is a special needs teacher. I understand it's totally unpredictable, but that's what we're faced with.
So, if I could ask respectfully, yeah, for the items that you would need to approve the school, is it only that it's the operational budget that's going on? If the operational budget was not happening, this would go in November, in your opinion?
Yeah. I mean, certainly we could vote on putting it on the ballot.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm trying to understand is, you know, for us, we needed to do this, you know, and I'm
It's unfortunate.
No, if we can, yeah, I mean, I'm just speaking from school building committee to select board as best we can, right? Because essentially you're our conduit, you and Glenn Hoffman are our conduit back to select board. If you guys choose not to put this on the November ballot, I understand it's your guys' votes. That's, you know, that's why you guys are elected and stuff like that. However, if you do decide to do that, us as a committee need a to-do list of what it's going to take to get you to a yes. That's what we need.
You need a to-do list of what?
Of what it's going to take to get this to a yes. Because
For Tuesday?
not for Tuesday. No,
Oh, okay.
What
Okay.
I'm saying is, come Tuesday, if you guys do not vote to put this on the November ballot, right? We're a good committee. We work hard. We need a to-do list from the select board, what it's going to take. So essentially come May or come next November, it's unanimous. Because for you guys to make your vote, it has to be 4 out of 5, right?
Correct.
So if you're a no vote at this time, and the other member who may be a no vote, or there may be multiple, I mean, we need to know from those no votes, what is the to-do list that we need to do? You know, we're willing to work, we're willing to do whatever we can, but until we get that feedback, we can't find it.
So I'll have to get to that.
Thank you. So for us, you know,
Yeah, I'm sure. What I don't understand is why they can't both happen at the same time.
Well, they can't happen in this time frame at the same time.
Why not?
Well, because we would have to put the budget together for the override, which we don't even have yet.
So I think it's that the override will happen in the spring. Am I correct?
well, I think,
Could happen in the fall.
so yeah, we're talking
Yeah.
multiple different things. So, just, yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Let me try to frame it.
Yeah, good.
Sorry. So essentially, for Ms. Cohen, to get both of them on the ballot for November, right, the town would have to develop all their budgets. Nick has done draft budgets from a very high level, I agree. It's nothing as finite as you would want for an override. But essentially, they would have to develop what these budgets are to come up with a dollar value to say for the operational override, we need this much operational every year.
Yeah.
To do that, he has to project it out. We don't want to do an operational override every year, so they have to make it a little higher than what they need next year. And then basically fine tune it over the next 4 or 5 years, like we've done 7 years without. The debt exclusion, we've got our number now, we're there. So technically, from a truly technical point of view, yes, you could put both of them on there. They could vote on, they'd have to get everything by next week, which they won't. But technically, Nick threw a number out there and you guys voted on it and everything, they could, but the reality is it probably won't, right? So what we're asking to do is to put the debt exclusion right now on November. We've got our number, we're ready to go. We're going to refine it between now and September. And then, when that refined number comes out, select board would still have to vote on, whether they approve or not approve. It typically happens at town meeting, whether they approve it or not approve the warrant article or support it. And then similarly for the warrant committee. So, and I just brought that up tonight because it gets confusing for everybody that's there. Like the question we're asking the select board now is just essentially allow people to vote. That's all we're asking, right? What that number is, if it's 173 million people vote and they feel that's way too much, then it gets voted down. At least, they're the ones who decided to eat that. Yeah, correct. But to Mr. Cohen's point, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I'm trying not to. As I said, you could do both in the fall, or you could do both in the spring. And the spring is typically when the town sets all their budgets, so they're more comfortable doing operational overrides then. But then it falls on behalf of the select board, whether they want to put them both together or spread them out. And I think that's where Mark was going, is that if we do an operational override in May, when do we come back to do the school? If it's not paired within the spring, and just correct me if I'm going wrong when I'm saying this. If it's not paired together in the spring, when then in the future are we going to do it? Because that's the concerning part, because if it keeps getting pushed off, specifically because we run out of funding. We're out of money come September. Everybody, these guys go away, architects go away, then it's just us.
And the only correction there is still open-minded to them both together, not 100% decided either way, but the operational can't be after it. So the operational has to be ready to go, and it's not right now. It's still here, we don't know. I have projections and I have a spreadsheet that shows us over budget this year and continuing for every year after that, but the actual numbers are not in yet.
Can I ask a hypothetical?
Yeah.
So while we're in this wrong, all right. Last year, we were hearing at the same time that we're going to need an operational override. We got through without one. If we got through without one, does that logic still stand that you will not support it until an operational override comes?
We need to answer the question. We don't know. I hear,
But the question is come May, if we don't do an operational override, the budgets get figured out come towards the end of the year. So we're going to know probably January, February, whether we need an operational override or not, right? Yeah. If there's no operational override next May, will you support the school first?
I'd put it on the ballot.
In May?
If that situation you described happens, that we don't need an override, and we determine that first, I would.
Okay. That's fine. It's all hypothetical, but I mean, that's kind of, and I agree with you, most likely we're going to need an override, but,
Yes, and again, I'm crossing my seats here, my school committee and my school building committee, so apologies.
Same.
I'll just say like the frustration I have, John, with that answer is that from a school committee perspective, we asked the select board for an override last year. Right? We asked for an operational override last spring to say, we need this, we're gonna run out, we know we're at the end of the rope, we need the funding. The select board said, no, we're not gonna give you an operational override. And so, right, that is what it is. But then now the select board's decision not to give an operational override, not to allow the town the ability to take a vote on an operational override, is being held against the schools again by saying, we're now going to, point Sean made, the delay is going to delay the school for another year, right? So we have another year of kids who will not have the benefits of the new school building. The 5.33% escalation on a $133 million project is $7 million extra dollars to the town. All of those things are occurring because the school project is ready in the timeline we said it was going to be ready, starting 12 months ago. But again, that's being held against the school building committee and the kids because the select board made the determination, we don't want to do an operational override next year, but we're worried we might need to do one this year. We're not even 100% sure we need to do one this year, but we might need one. And so we're going to kill this project temporarily until we're sure. And so again, it just feels like time after time, this is what the rest of the select board feels. And again, I only say this because obviously one vote lost is we can't lose any other votes. It just feels like an insult backhanded to the kids and to the staff at the school saying, hey, both we're not going to give you the additional resources through this override and we're not going to give you the school because we didn't give you those additional resources. So we're getting hit on both ends. And so I just don't know how to rectify those things. And to go back to the staff that you and I talked to and saw the real impacts of this problem, right, and expressed that to you and to me, and I've done multiple.
There you saw them.
My kids are there. I've done multiple tours right now.
Sorry.
But yeah. So, anyways, that is the thing I struggle with is that it's like both. It kind of feels like it's like we're talking about both sides of this battle, and so that I struggle with that. But again, I know that's not.
The other part that I would say as a taxpayer, I'm having a hard time reconciling the delay for both. It's you know, as a taxpayer, I care about the schools, I care about the services that the town has. I want to live in a town that is able to do what it needs to do. And so we knew this was coming, that was a need. We've known that. So delaying it by an extra year hasn't taken care of the issue. The issue is still there. Now the school building, the project, we delay it even further. It's going to cost me more. It's going to cost our residents more. So the logic of it, I'm having a hard time reconciling. Because I think as, members who are volunteering our time, working towards the town, that we should be working in unison to make both happen. Because we need both. And the further delays, that's the part that I'm like, just simple math would tell me it's not good for me, my household, and it's not good for the rest of the residents. So it's just the logic. I'm having a really hard time reconciling this. And just feel like it's important. We voted, keep pushing towards the timeline that we had set for ourselves. Otherwise, we are losing valuable time.
Yes, sir.
It feels to me, in response to both, that last year's override was putting it off was a mistake. And this year, I'm on the finance committee, and we had one meeting, and I brought up the subject of the impact of the school cost on it, and we have not had any more meetings since then. So I have the feeling that those are being held back. What had been being held back for this, and that was a mistake. I'm new at this, but that's the way it appeared to me is what happened. For me personally, since I started. It's been put, nobody wants to talk about the override until we get past this. And we can't do that. It's one thing to face it and put the data out there. It's another thing to shuffle it off to the side and not show people it. And that's what I'm seeing.
I'm sorry.
The override, the operational override.
Okay.
I guess, let's say from finance committee perspective, which she and I are both on for the school committee, but again, we're getting a little,
We're getting off agenda.
sorry, that's all.
Can I circle back to my original question was why they couldn't happen at the same time, and it sounds like the feeling is the override has to happen first, but I guess I don't understand why the operational override would have to happen prior to allowing the town to vote on a school or not.
Because there's the risk of shock. And the operational override is getting that approved is the most important. To right now, to the schools right now,
With, I don't understand the risk of shock.
sticker shock, like after voting on 175 million, then we gotta ask them to vote on an operational override. I mean, and you see it, look around in the towns all around us, they're shooting them down. It's not like it's a done deal. It's, what I hear about my job is to minimize risk. Minimize risk. And this is the biggest risk right now. We have to answer the question. Nick's gonna say, gee, we don't know what the override, if it's needed or not. We don't know. So until we do know, we need to know.
So the one other one I'll bring up for everybody is when we talk about delays. We've already been delayed a year. Just to be clear. So just reminding people, go back in time 2 years. We had the land swap in May 2022. And going into that town meeting, we had Conservation Commission, Warrant Committee, Select Board, everybody in favor of what we were doing for the land swap at that time. We voluntarily pulled back. We revised it to use a third of the conservation land. We made it better. We delayed this project by a year already. So that's one that a lot of people forget about. I mean, this project has already been delayed a year. And, once we pass the land swap, I think nobody should be surprised that, we're at where we're at. My presentation to Select Board it was April 6, 2022. And, the member of the Select Board at the time asked me when we would be doing an override. It stated then 2024, 2025, this exact time. You know what I mean? So myself, for a committee point of view, for us, I'm very proud that we're on schedule. We are there. You know what I mean? Projecting 2 years out, saying this is where I'm going to be in 2 years is, it takes a lot to say that. I get in trouble sometimes because I go out and say things that I probably shouldn't say because I'm doing things. But as I say, give me a deadline, I work better towards it. So, obviously when we made that push there, 2024, 2025, and now we hit it, you got to understand the frustration that, for 2 years we've been working towards this date. The big reason we're working towards this date is the presidential election. The turnout for a presidential election is roughly 18,000 voters in Milton. The turnout for an April election is 5,000 voters, 13,000 votes different. So I need everybody to put that in perspective because, people, the concern of why we're, so pushing for this is that to get as many of the people in the town that it will affect to vote on it. That's all we're asking them to do. If it's 173 million and they vote it down, at least they vote it down. Not us, not anybody else, the town. I know there's concerns that, trying to get a campaign or something there. If you didn't see it, there's a lot of parents involved in this. There were roughly 80 parents outside Select Board when we showed up last week. That number has organically been growing. I think it started with one mother showing up at the first Select Board meeting probably a couple months ago, slowly growing from there. This is my concern is parents going to come back from vacation. Like every parent they talk to is like, we already voted on it. We get the land, we're done, it's over. Nobody realizes we don't have the funding. But this thing is now going to get put on pause, at least for 3 or 4 months until we get additional funding, because our funding runs out in September. Most likely there's not going to be a town meeting till December. We're not going to get appropriations, assuming free cash is like we were lucky last year. So if free cash isn't there, we're dead till May. So that's now 8 months that we're just on pause. We're going to do meetings like this and talk. But that's kind of where we're at. So, I've asked the architects and the OPMs to tell us what their numbers are gonna be to continue this design. That's why Chanel's, graph there was showing it, because, as the money we got was, overall cost. We've got a fraction of the percent of the overall project for design cost. So typical OPM and designer fees are 12 to 15% of the overall project, right? So when we're looking at that, we're talking 10, $15 million. They've been working on a small budget. The architect's been working on 500,000. This next phase is going to be, higher than the 500,000. I don't know what the number is yet, and that's where I get in trouble. I'm setting up wrong. But we're going to need additional funding to kind of keep this going. Otherwise, we're on full pause for a long time. So, that will be news, I think, to a lot of parents. When they get back from vacation, they start school, they start realizing, like, what, the school, everyone thinks 2027 is when it was coming, because that was kind of our project schedule for everything. And now it's going to be sometime later. So, with kind of back to the agenda item, we'll go to motion. Just see if anybody else has discussion or comments, but essentially, this is the discussion approval. So essentially we go to a vote if you guys are so inclined. You can just say it loud too.
Oh, sure.
Sorry.
I move that we continue to go with the plan of having debt exclusion to fund the new school on the November 2024 election.
If I can just make a friendly
Sure.
amendment, it's a recommendation.
It's a recommendation.
To the
Okay,
select
to the
board.
select board. Yes.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Friendly amendment accepted.
Learning the rules.
Yeah.
As it's been going. It's only been 5 years. We'll figure it out at some point. Any second?
I was second that.
Right, second. Any discussion? Mark?
I do think it's important because now we have a number. I do think that it's important to say, to the point Mr. Johannan made, is like, we have cut down the building. I think is the point you made, like, we have time to continue to look at that number, refine, figure out ways to cut down, see if there are other things we can do to decrease the number. Because I do think the number is larger than everybody at this table was expecting the number to be, and everybody would like that number to be smaller. Everybody understands a smaller number has a greater ability to get past and to complete a school for our kids, which is what we want. That's the goal of this committee. So I think maybe in the future discussion, any additional kind of feedback from Arrow Street or PMA on potential, like, these are options for some space cuts that, and this is like approximately how much we think it would cut based upon this estimate. I think that type of conversation, some direction on that would be useful. So I think that should be named, because I don't think, I'm not trying to recommend it at the $173 million number. I think we can and should try and get it to be smaller, but I definitely agree with the recommendation to move this forward.
Yeah,
Given
and
that time.
so just clarity on that.
Right.
So yeah,
We're not recommending that.
we're not recommending a number.
Yeah.
So it's just to get the ballot question on November so that people can vote on. The number will come at the next one, but it's just a recommendation. So we'll jump on that one later.
No, I think that's good clarity. I just think from a public perspective, people are going to potentially tag on to saying, you're recommending this project at this number. And so we're saying, being clear that that is not, we have opportunity to continue to refine.
Any other comment? I keep looking down this way, but there's no members over here, so probably vote on that end, because those are our workers. They're doing a great job. All right, so.
Can you just check to see if I'm
I
wrong?
think
Yeah.
the sequence iPhone. That might be-
Oh, he might have texted me too. I'm trying not to check my phone. That's probably him. Yep, there he is. Hey, Glenn.
Hey, how you doing? Sorry,
Not
football
bad.
started tonight.
No, I miss football. Yeah, so, yeah, coaching for a while, it was great. I'm not sure how, I apologize, I wasn't watching the gallery, but, you know,
Not a problem.
yeah, do you have any comments or anything you want to say?
No, not at this point. I'm just kind of listening to taking in everything that's being discussed right now.
Okay. So,
Glenn, you heard the motion?
I heard a motion. I didn't get the exact wording. It was a little tough to make out.
All right, Glenn, I'm gonna
Sorry.
try it again.
I just want to make sure.
Okay, and I move that the school building committee make a recommendation to the select board for ballot question and debt exclusion to fund the new school on the November 2024 election.
Have it.
got it?
Thank you.
Great.
Oh, sorry, just 1 second. Hit, talk about it. Hello. How are you? Okay, I'll be right there, right? He's hopping, I'll be right there. That's an entrance.
Most important. Most important.
Thank you. The big boss, as I call him.
Your second on the motion, just so the minutes.
Oh, second it again?
Thank you, yep.
Okay.
Sorry about that. All right, seeing no further discussion, and we can't do nice hands up because Glenn's thrown it all off, so I'll do a roll call vote. Scott Tereschek,
Yes.
Mark Warren,
Yes.
Dr. Miranda,
Yeah.
Terry Hurley,
Yes.
let's go in.
No,
John, Glenn Hoffman. Wait for him to jump off mute. Glenn, waiting on you on the vote. Come back to him. So shot O'Rourke, yes. Plus he throws the vote off and then doesn't respond.
Sean, sorry, I lost my sound there for a minute.
It's all right. So we just did a roll call vote for the motion, Glenn.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, so agenda item 5C, discussion approval recommendation for fall town meeting prior to the November 2024 election to consider the debt exclusion to fund a new school. So this is basically us, again, requesting select board. If you do the vote in November, we'd also like to have the, as I showed on the schedule, to have a town meeting prior to that. So that when people go to the ballot, the number would be, solidified at that point for them.
Make a motion for recommendation to the select board for fall town meeting prior to the November 2024 election to consider debt exclusion to fund the new school.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Scott Tereschek,
Yes.
Mark Warren,
Yes.
Dr. Miranda.
Yeah.
Terry Hurley,
Yes.
John Cohen,
again, same reason, no.
Glenn Hoffman,
Yes.
and Sean O'Rourke, yes. All right, now to the fun ones. You get to cut checks. Item 5D, review and approve project invoices. So as part of your packet that you got, we got invoices for PMA, invoice number 6. And then we've got also, we'll take up the next one after. So essentially, for those, again, we just need a motion, or if people have comments or anything like that. Yes, sir.
Forgive me if I've seen this somewhere, because I'm not great at getting everything. Is there a breakdown of where we are so far, or is that something you could share?
Yeah, so that's one of the, so you look at the overall, like what we had budgeted.
Yeah.
Where we're at. I know for the architects, it was 475 and we've done, so if you look 200. Yeah, they're at 200 now.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yep, thanks, Chase.
What invoice is 36?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're on 6. All right, so ours is, billed today, 39,076 out of $160,000 budget.
Your budget?
Yeah, our budget was 160, our contract.
Total budget though for this phase, like, is there a,
We have it broken down by each consultant.
okay,
Total budget
okay,
this
okay.
phase is 610,000.
Forgive me because I'm getting up to speed.
Bill today is 239,076. That's including the including PMA. Yeah. So remaining bills 379.24.
So essentially, the agenda item we're talking about now is Arrow Streets.
Yep.
Yep.
Oh, are we doing PMAs first?
Arrow Street. Oh, PMA, you're right. Sorry about that. Yep. PMAs, so $8,250. So Sean was saying it's, what percentage? Sorry. 169 and here at 39,000.
160 or 39.
160. So it's about 25%, right?
Exact math, yeah, it's not like
40.
24%.
24. Yep.
No questioning invoices, just looking at budgets.
Yeah.
No, we did, it's a good point. We'll just put that on as a detail sheet, moving forward, so everyone knows exactly what we're
Thanks.
at.
Yep. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, we just wait for a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve PMA's invoice number 6, I believe it was.
I'll second.
Second, further discussion, hearing none. Roll call vote, Scott Tereschak,
Yes.
Mark Warren,
Yes.
Dr. Miranda,
Yes.
Terry Early,
Yes.
John Payne,
Yes,
Glenn Hoffman,
Yes.
all right, and Sean O'Rourke, yes. Item 5D, number 2, Arrow Street invoice for 2, which is their second invoice for $100,000. You can pull down on it.
I'll make a motion to approve Arrow Street invoice number 2, the amount of 100,000.
Second.
Second by Dr. Miranda. Any discussion? Hearing none. All right, roll call vote. Scott Tereschak,
Yes.
Mark Warren,
Yes.
Dr. Miranda,
Yes.
Terry Hurley,
Yes.
John Cohen,
yes.
Glenn Hoffman,
Yes.
and Sean O'Rourke, yes. All right, agenda item number 6, landing the plane, future meeting dates. So I think for us right now, this one's, it's all dependent on what comes out of, the next select board meeting. I would say for us, we probably would like to hold, probably 2 weeks out. I don't think we need to meet next week or anything. But I would hold 2 weeks out right now. So 12. If that works for everybody. And the others are attendance, we'll have to make it work for them. Good for you guys.
Yeah, sure, already get calendar reminder for most people.
Okay. And that's
Part of our standing.
Yeah, we're standing on 2 weeks. Okay. All right. Last and best, item 7, adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
All right, so moved. Second.
I'll second it.
Second. Roll call vote. Scott Tereschak,
Yes.
Mark Loring,
Yes.
Dr. Miranda,
Yes.
Terry Hurley,
Yes.
Cohen,
Yes.
Glenn Hoffman.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sean
Quick
O'Rourke,
meet.
yes. Thanks, Glenn. Have a good night.
Thank you.